The gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consider.
Gentleman is recognized for...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks. First, I would like to start off by thanking the chairman for having made some changes in this bill. The bill is not nearly as bad as it was at the beginning. However, I obviously cannot support it, but changing the tone was helpful in talking about Saddam Hussein versus Iraq suggesting the people of Iraq, who are hardly enemies of the American people. Saddam Hussein is a different subject. Also, changing the word aggression to a mounting threat. Aggression means that we have to immediately retaliate, I would suppose. Even a mounting threat is a bit threatening to me, but at least it is better in moving in the direction of non-confrontation with a nation 6,000 miles from our shore that I hardly see as a threat to our national security. One of the reasons why I take an approach on foreign policy where we are less involved overseas is mainly because I feel that the #1 obligation here for us in Congress, for the people of this country, is first to preserve liberty and defend it from outside threats. Now, the authors of this amendment, this resolution, I am sure have the same goals. But over the years, I just think those goals have been undermined. We as a nation are now probably weaker rather than stronger, and we are more threatened because of what we do overseas. For instance, just this week, we had Stinger missiles fired at our airplanes. Fortunately, they didn't hit our airplanes, but we paid for those Stinger missiles. And this week, there was an attack in India by allies, supposedly, in Pakistan, who are close allies now, who are receiving billions of dollars from us at the current time. This vacillation, shifting on and off, friends one time, enemy the next time, this perpetual war seems to me not to be in the best interest of the United States. Take, for instance, one of the whereases in this resolution. Whereas the Iraq attacked the Islamic Republic of Iran. We keep hearing this all the time. It was horrible. But they were our allies at the time. We were financing them, giving them money, helping them in technology. So I see this as a perfect example of us always flip-flopping. Not only do we frequently have those weapons that we buy and support a so-called friend turned against us, we so often have two elements of wars around the world fighting each other with our weapons. Now, my idea of national defense is minding our own business, being strong, and making sure our borders are secure. Today, after 9/11, we had to go to Germany and ask them for help for AWACS airplanes to patrol our shores. I understand our ports are not necessarily secure, and yet we have Coast Guard gutters down in Colombia and in the Mediterranean Sea. I think if anything that we should learn is that we ought to work harder to protect our country and not make us so vulnerable. And yet we continue along this way. We criticize the possibility or suggest the possibility of what might be happening in Iraq. And out of frustration, this amendment came up because there's been no evidence that Iraq is connected. Not that Saddam Hussein can be construed as any type of a good guy, but there's been no connection, so there had to be some reason to go into Iraq. Now, I tend to agree with Chairman Hyde that if there was evidence, we probably have, under the authority we've given the President, to go in. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the perpetuation, the continuation of the Persian Gulf War, which at the time was designed for the fight for our oil. I think that's what this is more about. And they say, well, maybe the anthrax came from Iraq. The mounting evidence today, sadly, suggests that it may well be coming from our CIA. And here we're almost ready to go to war against Iraq at the suggestion that our carelessness and our development of anthrax here in this country may have been a contributing factor to this anthrax being let loose in this country. It is suggested that Iraq, it will be easy to overtake Iraq because we have had this tremendous success in Afghanistan, and that we will have this uprising and the Kurds will be an element in this uprising. The plain truth is the Kurds will not be the salvation of our securing Iraq. Matter of fact, most of our allies, the Turks, although they may be bought and be able to allow us to use their bases, they're very nervous about this. And the whole idea that Iraq is the one that we have to be addressing, when you look at the problems throughout the world, when you look at what's happening in Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabia hasn't cooperated, and yet we have troops on their soil antagonizing the people over there. And at the same time, people are saying that all we have to do is invade Iraq, get rid of Saddam Hussein, and everything is going to be okay. Another whereas, they talk about 678, and it was instructed that under 678 we have this authority to go back in. That is not true. Matter of fact, 678 gave us the authority to withdraw, to get Saddam Hussein to withdraw from Iraq, and that doesn't mean that we can perpetuate war forever under that resolution. Matter of fact, if you want to go into Iraq and you want to follow the rules and you're pretending to follow the rules, you ought to do a couple things. You have to go back to this. If you believe in the United Nations, you have to go back to the United Nations if you believe in the rule of law. And also you have to answer the question, why does this resolution need to be enforced versus other resolutions that have never been enforced? And why is it assumed that the United States has to enforce UN resolutions? When did it come to the point where the UN dictates foreign policy to us? So there's a lot of questions here about this desire to immediately go into Iraq. I think is actually poses a threat to our security more than it helps us. So I'm suggesting that we go more cautiously. I'm glad this resolution has been toned down a little bit, but it more or less represents those individuals who think that we should be at war with Iraq today, and I disagree with that.
Gentleman reserves his time.